Hello and welcome back to another amazing episode of For Evergreen. Our world is a tapestry of wonders, a collection of places that inspire awe and capture our imagination. We travel to see them, to stand in their presence, and to connect with the long, intricate story of our planet. But what happens when these places disappear? Today we embark on a journey not through space, but through time, to visit 9 amazing tourist attractions that no longer exist. These are not merely lost landmarks, they are chapters of our shared history, now closed forever. From ancient temples carved by human hands to breathtaking natural wonders sculpted by the patient forces of nature, each one held stories, beauty, and memories that are now just part of history. We will explore the silent caves that once echoed with the footsteps of our earliest ancestors, and stand at the edge of cliffs where magnificent rock formations have crumbled into the sea. These places were once destinations for pilgrims, adventurers, and dreamers, their images captured in countless photographs and postcards. Now, they live on only in our memories, and in the tales we tell. It is a poignant reminder of the fragility of both human creation and the natural world itself. Some were lost to the slow, inexorable march of time and the elements, while others were tragically erased by our own actions. The stories of their disappearance are as compelling as the stories of their existence. So join me as we pay tribute to these vanished marvels, and stay tuned, because you won't believe what happened to the Azure Window in Malta, a dramatic tale of nature's power. Our journey begins deep within the earth, in the Cantabria region of northern Spain. Here lies the cave of Altamira, a place often called the Sistine Chapel of Paleolithic art. For millennia, its walls held a secret gallery, a breathtaking collection of charcoal drawings and polychrome paintings created by our Magdalenian ancestors some 36,000 years ago. These were not mere doodles, they were masterpieces of a forgotten age, depicting bison, horses, and human hands with astonishing skill and vitality. It was a direct, tangible link to the minds and spirits of the first modern humans in Europe. When rediscovered in the late 19th century, the cave's significance was almost beyond comprehension. It became a site of pilgrimage for scientists, artists, and the curious public, all eager to gaze upon this primordial art. Visitors flocked to witness the incredible bison, their forms cleverly using the natural contours of the rock to create a three-dimensional effect. The air within the cave, once still for thousands of years, began to change with every new group that entered, each person a source of warmth, moisture, and unseen microbes. The very breath of its admirers became its greatest threat. The delicate equilibrium that had preserved these paintings for tens of thousands of years was disturbed. The increased humidity and carbon dioxide from the constant stream of visitors created the perfect conditions for mold to grow. Green and black blemishes began to appear on the ancient artworks, a creeping sickness that threatened to erase them completely. The presence that brought the cave to the world's attention was now slowly, inexorably destroying it. Faced with an impossible choice, authorities made a difficult but necessary decision. To save this fragile legacy, the original cave was closed to the public in 1977, and then again permanently in 2002. The vibrant world of our Paleolithic ancestors was sealed off once more, protected from the very species that created it. The silence returned to the gallery, preserving the art in a state of suspended animation, a treasure too precious to be touched by the modern world. Today, visitors can experience a meticulous replica created nearby, which allows us to appreciate the artistry without harming the original. But the authentic Altamira, the true Sistine Chapel of our ancestors, has vanished from public view. It remains a silent, hallowed ground, a powerful reminder that sometimes, to truly preserve a wonder, we must learn to leave it alone, allowing its story to continue in the dark, undisturbed. We now travel to the coast of Australia, to the Royal National Park south of Sydney. Here, perched precariously on a cliff edge, was a geological marvel known as Wedding Cake Rock. Its name was a perfect description. It was a block of pure, brilliant white sandstone, layered and angled, as if cut from a giant confectioner's masterpiece. For years, it was a spectacular B-roll for social media, a must-have photograph for hikers and tourists exploring the breathtaking coastal walk. The contrast of the stark white rock against the deep blue of the Pacific Ocean was an irresistible sight. The rock's allure, amplified by the age of social media, became its undoing. Thousands of visitors flocked to the site, drawn by the promise of an epic photo. They would leap across a chasm to stand on its surface, perform yoga poses near the edge, or dangle their feet over the sheer drop to the churning waves below. The pursuit of the perfect picture led to increasingly reckless behavior, with many ignoring the warning signs and safety barriers that were later erected. The rock became a symbol not just of natural beauty, but of human bravado in the face of nature's power. However, the beauty of Wedding Cake Rock was profoundly deceptive. It appeared solid, stable, and permanent, but geologists knew otherwise. The brilliant white color was not a sign of strength, but of a process called leaching, where iron and other minerals had been weathered out of the sandstone, leaving it soft and brittle. Geotechnical surveys revealed a terrifying truth. The entire formation was dangerously unstable, held together by little more than its own weight and a prayer. It was not a question of if it would collapse, but when. Engineers predicted that the entire ledge could shear off and plummet into the sea at any moment, without any warning whatsoever. The risk to public safety was deemed too great. The constant foot traffic and the vibrations from people jumping on its surface were likely accelerating its inevitable demise. Faced with the potential for a catastrophic accident, the National Parks and Wildlife Service made the only responsible choice. In 2015, a high, sturdy fence was erected, permanently closing off all access to the rock. Though the rock itself still stands, for now, its life as a tourist attraction is over. It has vanished from our reach, transformed from an interactive landmark into a distant, untouchable sculpture. It serves as a stark lesson in the hidden fragility of the natural world, and a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating the forces that shape our coastlines. The perfect photo was simply not worth the ultimate price. Our story now takes us to the border of Brazil and Paraguay, to a place where the Paraná River once roared with unimaginable power. This was the site of the Guaíra Falls, or Sete Quedas, the Seven Falls in Portuguese, but this name was a profound understatement. It was not merely seven falls, but a complex series of 18 massive cataracts spread across a 3-mile-wide chasm. The sheer volume of water that thundered through these gorges was, by some estimates, the greatest of any waterfall on Earth. Twice that of Niagara, and 12 times that of Victoria Falls. The sound was a physical presence, a deafening roar that could be heard from 20 miles away, a constant deep tremor in the earth. A perpetual mist hung in the air, refracting the sunlight into countless rainbows that danced over the churning, violent water. The indigenous Guarani people considered it a sacred place, a gateway to the divine. For tourists, it was a humbling, terrifying, and utterly hypnotic spectacle of nature's raw, untamed force. Suspension bridges were built, allowing visitors to stand directly over the abyss, feeling the spray on their faces and the vibration of the river in their bones. But this natural wonder stood in the path of human ambition. In the 1970s, Brazil and Paraguay, two nations hungry for energy to power their growing economies, embarked on one of the most audacious engineering projects in history, the construction of the Itaipu Dam. This colossal structure, a modern wonder of the world in its own right, was designed to harness the immense power of the Paraná River. Its creation, however, required an immense sacrifice. The dam would create a vast reservoir, and the Great Guaíra Falls were slated to be drowned. As the dam neared completion in 1982, a sense of tragic urgency filled the air. Thousands of tourists made a final pilgrimage to say goodbye. They watched as engineers used dynamite to blast away the rock faces of the falls, a measure intended to improve navigation for the future reservoir, but seen by many as a final act of desecration. Then, slowly, the floodgates of the dam closed, and the water began to rise. The thundering roar of the falls began to quiet, a giant voice being slowly silenced. Within 2 weeks, the Guaíra Falls were gone. The colossal cataracts, the churning whirlpools, and the misty rainbows all vanished beneath the placid, silent waters of the Itaipu Lake. Today, one of the world's largest hydroelectric power plants generates electricity for millions, a testament to human ingenuity. But beneath the surface of its reservoir lies a ghost. The world's most voluminous waterfall, a place of sacred power and sublime beauty, became a lost wonder, sacrificed in the name of progress. We journey now to the Phi Phi Islands in Thailand, to a cove of such perfect beauty it seemed to be a fantasy. This is Maya Bay, Enclosed on three sides by towering 100-meter-high limestone cliffs, its entrance to the sea is a narrow channel, revealing a hidden paradise within. The beach is a strip of silky soft white sand, and the water is a tranquil, luminous turquoise, shallow and clear. For generations, it was a secluded haven, known mostly to local fishermen and intrepid travelers. Then, in the year 2000, Hollywood arrived. The film The Beach, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, used Maya Bay as its idyllic, secret utopia. The movie was a global sensation, and in its wake, the secret was out. Maya Bay was transformed overnight from a hidden gem into one of the most famous beaches on the planet. The trickle of visitors became a flood. At its peak, up to 5,000 tourists and 200 boats would crowd into the small bay every single day. The paradise that everyone came to see was being systematically destroyed by their very presence. The constant churn of boat propellers destroyed over 80% of the bay's precious coral reef, turning vibrant underwater gardens into a barren, rubble-strewn seabed. The sheer number of people on the sand compacted it, while sunscreen, waste, and leaking fuel polluted the once pristine water. The blacktip reef sharks that had used the bay as a nursery for their young fled the noise and chaos. The ecosystem was collapsing under the crushing weight of mass tourism. Recognizing that the bay was on the brink of ecological death, the Thai authorities made a bold and unprecedented decision. In June 2018, they announced the indefinite closure of Maya Bay to all tourists. The goal was not a short break, but a long-term, intensive rehabilitation project. The bay, once a symbol of tourism's excesses, was to become a laboratory for ecological recovery. It was a painful but necessary admission that the paradise had been loved to death. Over the years of its closure, something remarkable has happened. With the boats and crowds gone, nature has begun to reclaim its lost territory. The water has cleared, and marine biologists have been painstakingly planting new coral, which has slowly begun to take root and grow. Most heartening of all, the blacktip reef sharks have returned, swimming gracefully through the shallow, quiet waters. Maya Bay, the tourist attraction, has vanished, but in its place, the living, breathing ecosystem is slowly being reborn. Our next destination is the windswept coast of Oregon in the United States, at a place called Cape Kiwanda. Here, amidst a landscape of dramatic sandstone cliffs and sea stacks, stood a unique and beloved rock formation. It was a pedestal rock, elegantly balanced, that from a certain angle bore an uncanny resemblance to a duck's head and bill. Affectionately known as the duckbill, or sometimes by its more official but less used name, Pedestal Rock, it was a photographer's delight and a cherished, local landmark for decades. The formation was a product of millennia of wind and water erosion, a delicate sculpture carved by nature's patient hand. It stood within a fenced-off area, deemed unstable and dangerous by state park officials. The sandstone in this area is notoriously soft and prone to sudden collapse. The fences were a clear warning, an appeal to visitors to admire the formation from a safe distance and protect both themselves and the fragile rock. It was a testament to the precarious beauty that defines the Oregon coast. Despite the warnings and the fences, many visitors chose to ignore the rules. The duckbill became another prop for social media, with people climbing over the fence to pose on or next to the delicate structure. They saw it not as a fragile piece of natural history, but as a playground. This disregard for the rules set the stage for a senseless act of destruction that would shock and sadden people around the world. In August of 2016, a group of visitors, who later claimed they were trying to do a favor for a friend who had broken his leg on the rock, decided to take matters into their own hands. A video surfaced, showing them pushing against the 7-foot-tall pedestal. With a concerted effort, they rocked the formation back and forth until, with a final, sickening crumble, it toppled over and shattered into a pile of rubble. The act was one of blatant, inexplicable vandalism. The duckbill was gone forever. It wasn't taken by a storm or a great earthquake, but by a few individuals in a moment of profound foolishness. The empty space where it once stood is now a scar on the landscape, a permanent monument to the destructive potential of human ignorance. The loss of the duckbill serves as a painful reminder that our natural wonders are not invincible. They're often fragile treasures, and their continued existence depends on our respect and care. We now travel to the heart of Afghanistan, to the Bamiyan Valley. For 1,500 years, this valley was watched over by two colossal figures, carved directly into the face of a sandstone cliff in the 6th century. These were the Buddhas of Bamiyan. The larger, known as Sal, stood an astonishing 175 feet tall, while the smaller, Shamama, was 115 feet. They were, at the time of their creation, the tallest standing Buddha statues in the world, magnificent examples of a unique blend of Gandharan, Hellenistic, and Indian artistic styles. For centuries, they stood as serene sentinels along the Silk Road, a vital artery of commerce and cultural exchange. They witnessed the passage of merchants, monks, and armies. They were admired by Buddhist pilgrims and later by Islamic scholars and travelers who marveled at these idols of a bygone era. The niches in which they stood were covered in vibrant frescoes, and the statues themselves were once adorned with paint and gold, shimmering in the Afghan sun. They were more than statues. They were the soul of the valley, an integral part of its identity and history. Their existence was a testament to a rich pluralistic past, a time when different cultures and religions coexisted and influenced one another in this crossroads of the world. Even after the region converted to Islam, the statues were largely respected as historical monuments. They survived the armies of Genghis Khan and centuries of political upheaval. They became a symbol of Afghanistan's proud and ancient heritage, a potential beacon for future tourism that could help rebuild a war-torn nation. But in March of 2001, this long history came to a brutal and tragic end. The Taliban regime, declaring the statues to be idols, and an affront to their strict interpretation of Islam, decided to destroy them. The world watched in horror and pleaded for them to be spared, with offers from museums and governments to move and preserve them. The pleas were ignored. In an act of calculated cultural destruction, the Taliban spent weeks planting explosives, and then, they blew the Buddhas to pieces. The serene giants who had watched over the valley for a millennium and a half were reduced to dust and rubble in a matter of moments. Today, two gaping, empty niches scar the cliff face. They are haunting voids, absences that speak more loudly than the statues themselves ever could. They are not just empty spaces, they are a memorial to a deliberate act of erasing history, a profound and willful loss that has left the world, and the Bamiyan Valley, immeasurably poorer. We journey to the Mediterranean, to the island of Gozo in the Maltese archipelago. Here, for centuries, the sea had carved a masterpiece. It was known as the Tika Ta Dwedra, or the Azure Window. This was a spectacular natural arch, a flat-topped limestone bridge that jutted out from the cliffs and plunged its massive pillar into the deep blue sea below, framing a perfect window of azure water and sky. It was an icon of Malta, a geological celebrity featured in countless postcards, travel brochures, and even in the epic series Game of Thrones. The window was a place of immense natural drama. On calm days, tourists in small boats would pass through the arch, gazing up at its colossal scale. Divers explored the Blue Hole, a world-renowned dive site at its base. But it was during a storm that the window showed its true character, as colossal waves would smash against its pillar, sending spray high into the air. It was a constant battle between the rock and the sea, a slow, geological drama that had been playing out for hundreds of years. But time was taking its toll. Geologists knew the arch was living on borrowed time. Large pieces of rock had fallen from its underside over the years, and studies revealed deep, irreparable fissures in its structure. An inevitable fragility was part of its very nature. In its final years, warning signs were put up, forbidding people from walking across the top of the arch. Though these were often ignored, everyone knew its days were numbered, but no one knew when the final moment would come. That moment arrived on the morning of March 8, 2017. A fierce gale, with waves reportedly reaching 3 stories high, battered the Gazetan coast. The storm raged with a particular fury against the ancient pillar of the Azure Window. There was no single, dramatic crack. Instead, the relentless power of the sea simply overwhelmed the tired rock. With a final groaning surrender, not just the arch but the entire stack supporting it collapsed into the churning water and vanished completely. When the storm subsided and the sea calmed, there was nothing left. Where an icon had stood for 500 years, there was now only open sea. The loss was met with national mourning in Malta. But in this story of disappearance, there is a fascinating epilogue. The rubble of the fallen giant has created a new and exciting underwater landscape for divers. The Azure Window, the tourist attraction, is gone. But its remains have given birth to a new habitat, a new secret for the sea to hold. Beginning the next chapter in the long story of this coastline, our journey now takes us to the other side of the world, to the North Island of New Zealand in the late 19th century. Here, on the shores of Lake Rodomahana, existed a geological formation so beautiful, so otherworldly, that it was widely known as the eighth wonder of the world. These were the pink and white terraces, or Otukapuarangi and Te Tarada, in the Maori language. They were a cascading series of silica sinters, natural staircases formed by geothermal springs rich in minerals. The white terraces were the larger of the two, covering over 7 acres and descending like a frozen waterfall into the lake. The pink terraces, smaller and more delicate, were famed for their beautiful rosy hue, thought to be caused by the presence of certain oxides or bacteria. Water from the hot springs flowed over the basins, creating a series of infinity pools filled with warm, milky blue water, each one spilling into the next. For the wealthy Victorian tourists who made the arduous journey to see them, it was like stepping into a fairy tale. This was one of the world's first major tourist attractions. Visitors would be guided by the local Te Arawa Iwi, who acted as guardians and guides to this sacred place. People would bathe in the warm, mineral-rich pools, marveling at the delicate scalloped edges of the basins and the sheer, overwhelming beauty of the landscape. The terraces were a source of immense pride, wonder, and economic prosperity for the region, a unique treasure of the natural world. But this geothermal paradise sat atop a sleeping giant. The entire area is part of the Taupo volcanic zone, and in the early hours of June 10, 1886, that giant awoke. Mount Tarawera, a volcano that had been dormant for centuries, erupted with catastrophic violence. The eruption was one of the largest in New Zealand's recent history. It buried several villages, tragically claiming over 120 lives, and completely and utterly reshaped the surrounding landscape. When the ash and smoke finally cleared, the world's eighth wonder was gone. The pink and white terraces had been completely obliterated, buried under tons of mud and volcanic ash. Lake Rodomahana, where they once stood, was blasted to 20 times its original size. For over a century, it was believed they were destroyed forever. In recent years, however, scientists using submersible vehicles have found tantalizing evidence that portions of the terraces may have survived, submerged and hidden deep beneath the waters of the new, larger lake. A lost wonder waiting, perhaps, to be rediscovered. For our final story, we travel high into the Altiplano of Bolivia, to a place that was once a vast expanse of shimmering water. This was Lake Pupo. At its peak, it was the second largest lake in the country, covering an area of nearly 1,000 square miles. It was a shallow saline body of water, a vital oasis in a harsh, arid landscape. For centuries, it was the lifeblood of the Uru Murato people, one of Bolivia's oldest indigenous communities, who referred to themselves as people of the water. The lake was a thriving, if fragile, ecosystem. It was a critical stopover point for tens of thousands of migratory birds, including 3 species of flamingos that would paint the shoreline in brilliant pink. The Urumurato people depended entirely on its bounty, fishing for its native species and harvesting bird eggs. Their entire culture, their economy, and their very identity were inextricably linked to the rhythms of the lake, its seasonal rise and fall, and the life it sustained. But Lake Pupo was always in a precarious position. It had no major outlet, and was fed primarily by a single river, the Desaguadero, which flows from the much larger Lake Titicaca. In recent decades, a devastating combination of factors began to choke this lifeline. An increasingly severe cycle of climate change, driven by phenomena like El Niño, brought prolonged droughts and higher temperatures, increasing the rate of evaporation to unsustainable levels. At the same time, more and more water was being diverted from its source rivers for mining and agriculture. The lake began to shrink. The water receded from the shorelines, leaving behind vast, cracked salt flats. The fish died, unable to survive in the increasingly shallow and salty water. The magnificent flocks of flamingos stopped coming, their feeding grounds gone. For the Uru Murato people, it was an apocalypse in slow motion. Their boats were left stranded on a dry, dusty plain, symbols of a lost way of life. They were forced to abandon their ancestral homes, becoming climate refugees in their own land. By the end of 2015, the inevitable happened. Lake Pupo was officially declared to be fully evaporated. A body of water that had existed for thousands of years, a sea in the mountains, had vanished into thin air. While small amounts of water can return during intense rainy seasons, scientists believe the lake's ecosystem is gone for good. It is perhaps the most stark and devastating example on our list, a vast tourist attraction and a vital ecosystem erased, not by a sudden catastrophe, but by the slow, creeping pressures of a changing climate and human activity. As our journey comes to an end, we are left with a profound sense of awe and a touch of melancholy. The stories of these 9 lost wonders are more than just historical footnotes. They are powerful parables for our time. They show us that nothing, not the grandest human monument nor the most resilient natural formation, is truly permanent. The world we inhabit is in a constant state of flux, shaped by the slow dance of geology, the sudden fury of the elements, and increasingly, by the choices we make as a species. From the silent caves of Altamira to the dry bed of Lake Pupo, each loss leaves a void, but they also leave behind a legacy. They compel us to look more closely at the wonders that still surround us, to appreciate their beauty, and to understand their fragility. The memory of what has been lost can inspire a greater commitment to protect what remains. These stories urge us to be more mindful travelers, more thoughtful custodians, and more aware inhabitants of this extraordinary planet. Though we can no longer visit these places, their stories endure. They live on in photographs, in historical accounts, and in videos like this one. They remind us that our connection to a place doesn't end when it disappears from a map. If you liked this video so far, and found this journey through time as moving as I have, please leave a like to show your support. And for more explorations of our planet's incredible destinations, you can also check out our video on the 10 most wonderful places in the world on our channel, 4Evergreen. Thank you for joining me.